Stephen was rendered speechless by the irresponsible rules and lack of concern for the participants. The most dangerous aspect of the first round was the ruins itself. It was pointless for Liam to surrender. Liam ran as far as he could from the ravine. He stopped when there were no more roots in sight. The ruins were filled with the aura of death. The air was suffocating, and the lack of oxygen made it hard to run for long. Before he had a chance to catch his breath, he noticed ripples in the air. Stephen could sense spatial fluctuations coming from them. He'd encountered Tempest Citadel countless times, and he was more familiar with these fluctuations by now. "Don't get too close. If you're drawn in, you'll be transported somewhere else. They're weaker than regular spatial fluctuations, but you never know where they'll take you." The ripples drifted slowly, and in the dim environment they were barely noticeable. If a participant accidentally came in contact with them, there was no telling where they'd end up. "Why are they here?" Liam asked. "This goes against the laws of nature." "The ancient cultivators might have used space-time techniques during the war, and their power's been trapped in these ruins ever since," Stephen guessed. He had a feeling that there was a defensive array separating the Haven domain from the Holy Ruins. Otherwise, the Haven domain would be at constant risk of the strange phenomena from the ruins. Liam caught movement from the corner of his eye. A group of participants appeared on the walls. Their bodies were twisted into unnatural angles. The unsuspecting participants had wandered into a ripple and they were escaping the skeletons, and it transported them a short distance away. Their disfigured bodies were a result of incomplete teleportation. The turtle peeked out of Liam's pocket and urged him to keep moving. The ripples were gathered in this area, and he'd end up like a mutilated participant if he kept standing around. There was nowhere to go except forward. The further Liam went, the darker the ruins became. He resisted the urge to condense his energy and light up the path ahead to avoid attracting unwanted attention. The walls around him were embedded with the participants' body parts. Basking them in light would be scarier than seeing them in the dark. The audience on the shore ate and drank without a care in the world. The staff served the best tea and snacks. If the audience asked, they wouldn't hesitate to hold a barbecue to pass the time. Stephen noticed Shadow and a group of young successors to their respective families gathered around a bonfire roasting meat. No one cared about the participants in the first round. The survivors were the only ones who mattered. The dead were just unlucky. Vivian tapped Stephen on the shoulder to get his attention. She gestured to the forest, where Mariah was waving at them. The Mystic Covenant hadn't constructed a lounge area at the edge of the forest for him to watch the first round comfortably. He didn't belong to a faction, but his extraordinary craftsmanship was well known across the realm. He was treated as a distinguished guest wherever he went. Mariah motioned to the seats beside him. "Have a seat. I wanted to express my gratitude sooner, but I didn't want to bother you when you were so busy preparing for the recruitment." Stephen sat down, feeling awkward. If it weren't for the threadworms, he wouldn't have found Mariah's daughter so soon. Mariah placed a weapon he'd personally forged on the table. It was his gift to Stephen for saving his daughter. Stephen was surprised to see a gun in the Elysian realm. The revolver was carved out of a 7-colored crystal, and the barrel was slightly longer than the ones he was used to. He reached for the gun and picked it up. It slid smoothly into his grasp. The grip was comfortable, as if it had been tailor-made for him. "I heard you're an ascender from the human realm. I know they use firearms over there, so I made this gun for you. The inside of the barrel is engraved with an amplification array. When you're in battle, touch the crystal and the energy it contains will turn into powder and form bullets inside. Then aim and fire like you usually would with a regular gun." Stephen didn't need to test the gun to know that it was a powerful weapon. Anything Mariah forged was the best of the best. "Thank you. It's like a work of art. No wonder so many cultivators seek you out when they need a weapon." Mariah stroked his beard proudly. He would be retiring soon, and perhaps this weapon would be his last masterpiece before he handed off the factory to his students. Stephen's cultivation was low, but he had high expectations for him. It would be a waste if he died during the recruitment. The two Sheridan brothers watched the exchange from a distance. They were beginning to find Vivian unpleasant to the eye. When did Mariah get so close with the Bellantine family? Did they get him to agree to a business partnership before us? I doubt it. The Bellantine family is famous for their mercenaries. It's normal for them to purchase weapons in large quantities. Who else but they would have been able to save Mariah's daughter from right under our noses and even throw an explosive at us? Wealthy families in the Sky Domain aren't as strong as the ones in the Haven Domain. How hard can it be to put them in their place? Don't forget what kind of businesses they run. Their status is only second to the Lord of Minori City. We can release a couple of missions as bait. When their mercenaries take on the job, we'll kill them off. Without their mercenaries, the Bellantine family's nothing. Threatening Mariah directly wasn't a good idea, because they needed his help, but eliminating his secret allies like the Bellantine family was different. Vivian, who was engrossed in conversation with Mariah, was none the wiser of the calamity about to befall her family. The three emissaries were staring at the lake intently, watching the battle unfold in the holy ruins. A group of cultivators with long brown fur and frenzied red eyes crawled out from a pile of bones. They rushed towards the fallen participants and devoured their flesh. The audience was disgusted by the carnage reflected in the lake. Many of them left their seats and took a stroll in the forest for a change of scenery. The first round was intense, but cutting down on almost 9,000 participants would take a while. The three emissaries whispered amongst themselves. The bodies are attracting the berserkers. The holy ruin is full of mysteries, and it's a convenient venue to reduce the number of participants. If it weren't for that, we never would have chosen such a strange location for the first round. I don't understand how the higher-ups just found out about the ancient cultivators were hibernating in the holy ruins. I doubt anyone has set foot in that place for thousands of years. Don't underestimate the elders. They're capable of anything. Anyway, we should report this to our superior. The first emissary left his seat and hurried to the attic. An elder from the Mystic Covenant was sitting on the floor with his eyes closed, deep in thought. He turned a deaf ear to the commotion outside. He rarely made an appearance in the faction. The only time he showed himself was during important events like the recruitment. The emissary respectfully stood outside the door and reported the events in the holy ruins. The ancient cultivators in the ruins woke up from their deep sleep. They're devouring the participants' bodies to replenish their energies. How long do you think the participants will last? The elder asked. Everyone is fleeing the scene. How long they'll last will depend on how many ancient cultivators there are. The elder opened his eyes, and the emissary shivered from the surge of aura in the room. Go back to your seat and continue hosting the first round. When the number of participants reaches the desired amount, move the survivors to a safe place. I'll send specialized personnel to handle the rest. The hatred of the berserkers in the ruins stemmed from the Mystic Covenant. They used to work for the faction as a special squad. Back when Stephen found the berserker's blessing and Thierry placed one of its eyes on his arm, an influx of power had almost driven him insane. It was similar to installing an engine with an unlimited energy supply. The berserkers were undoubtedly powerful cultivators. Their squad in the Mystic Covenant performed exceptionally well, and their faction had given them dangerous missions. They treated them like sacrifices, and dissatisfaction brewed in their hearts. As time passed, they began to question their value, and their grief over the deaths of their companions turned into hatred. Whenever they entered a berserker state, their rationality declined, making them more susceptible to mental attacks from their enemies. The berserkers in the holy ruins were cultivators who used to be members of a special squad in the Mystic Covenant. They went mad during battle and were controlled by their enemies. In their eyes, joining forces with the enemy wasn't a betrayal. Their companions had died because of the Mystic Covenant. They were the real enemy. When the berserkers were driven into a corner after working together with the faction's enemies, they used a teleportation array and hid in the holy ruins to recover from their injuries and return to peak condition through a prolonged hibernation. Thousands of years had passed since then. The bloodshed from the first round awakened them once more. The first emissary returned to his seat and took out a handful of exquisite weapons. Are you going to give those to the participants? How are we going to reduce their numbers if you help them? The third emissary asked. The elder wants to prioritize our original goal. We chose the holy ruins as a venue to lure the berserkers out of hiding. They've revealed themselves, so we have to treat them as our primary targets. The participants in the ruins were running for their lives when golden weapons appeared in front of them. They didn't hesitate to take them. The weapons were much stronger than the ones they brought from the surface. The Mystic Covenant's members had compressed a large amount of their inner energy into the weapons in advance, so they wouldn't need to waste their energy reserves in battle. This convenience was now in the hands of the participants. The participants brandished their shiny new weapons and rushed at the ancient cultivators. They didn't know who they were, but their unusual appearance and cannibalistic actions gave them a sense of danger. When they attacked, the ancient cultivators' fur deflected their weapons. They were harder than steel needles. It didn't take long for the participants to lose their enthusiasm. Their new weapons were no match for the ancient cultivators. The third emissary sympathized with the participants. She scanned the area around the temple, hoping to see reinforcements from the Mystic Covenant, but they were nowhere in sight. The first emissary noticed her looking around. We should listen to the elder. When the number of participants reaches the target, we'll prepare for the second round. How is this even a proper competition? The elders are sacrificing the participants for their own gains. Now I understand why they exempted 10% of the participants with connections from the first round. They couldn't risk their lives. Our duty is to follow orders. The elders are our superiors. We're not qualified to question them. The walls have ears. Be careful what you say. The changes in the holy ruins attracted the audience's attention again. They ended their entertainment and leisure activities and returned to their seats. They concentrated on the surface of the lake. None of them recognized the strange cultivators. The Mystic Covenant had kept its internal conflicts a secret from the public, including the reason why they'd chosen the holy ruins as a venue for the first round. A small group of participants announced their surrender, hoping they still had a chance to make it out alive. A swirl of light enveloped them, along with the word defeat. This protected them from the other participants, but not the unusual phenomena in the ruins. The ancient cultivators had lost their rationality. The only thought in their minds was to slaughter every member of the Mystic Covenant. They weren't the only enemy the participants had to watch out for. The pile of bones scattered over the ground continuously pieced together into skeletons. The participants looked at each other, unsure of what to do. If they stayed, they'd have to fight a risky battle with the ancient cultivators and the skeletons. If they ran and hid, they'd become targets for the participants hiding with malicious intentions. At that moment, a handsome young man dashed through the crowd and attacked indiscriminately. The participants, ancient cultivators, and skeletons were caught off guard by the sudden ambush. The audience was more confused than surprised. The participants were in a standoff with the ancient cultivators and the skeletons. Making himself the center of attention was a dangerous and risky move. The young man had to be a lunatic who'd lost his mind, but his bold actions contradicted his swordsmanship. It was obvious from his sharp and accurate moves that he was sane and fully aware of what he was doing. Mariah and Vivian looked Stephen up and down, as if trying to assess if he was an illusion or the real thing. Why does that man look exactly like you? Is he another one of your friends, or is he your twin? Out of everyone in the audience, Stephen was the most bewildered by the unexpected development. The Elysian realm was truly a world of wonders. I don't know him, and I don't have a twin. The only friend I have in the first round is Liam. Vivian's gaze flickered back and forth from Stephen and the lake's reflection. How is that possible? He's the spitting image of you. His appearance, clothes, and weapon, you two are identical. If you don't know him, how does he know you? No one had an answer. The young man was identical to Stephen, but he was more skilled with the sword, and his cultivation was higher. Why would he imitate a weakling with no background? Perhaps the mystery would only be solved when Stephen met his imposter for himself. To the participants, the young man was an eyesore. The cultivators and the skeletons were already too much to handle on their own. Now they had another enemy on their hands. As soon as the young man made his grand entrance, he turned his sword on the participants. The conflict intensified, and the participants' hatred grew. Finally, one of them couldn't stand it anymore. Everyone, let's work together and kill that nuisance. Then we'll deal with the others. I'm guessing he's a creation of the ruins. The young man leaped onto a hill, standing tall before the participants. His real identity was the leader of Tempest Citadel, Thorin Ambrose. Can't you tell the difference between a cultivator and a phenomenon? In the middle of Thorin's battle with Stephen's team at the very bottom of the sea, he'd broken through to the true immortal realm and risked his life during the heavenly trial for a chance to ascend. He barely managed to survive and ascended to the Elysian realm. He stayed away from the bustling cities and found an inconspicuous cave in the wilderness to recuperate. After recovering, he spent a great deal of effort to get invitations to the Mystic Covenant's recruitment. His goal was to join the expeditionary team. With his authority, he would give Stephen a random charge and lead a team to the human realm to annihilate him and the U.S. He wasn't strong enough to accomplish this on his own. He needed a strong backer, and the Mystic Covenant was the ally he needed. The participants were enraged. People like you need to be put in their place. There are thousands of us and only one of you. We're more than enough to kill one cultivator. Every participant brandished their weapons with fury in their eyes and lunged for Thorin. Liam was hiding in the distance, bewildered by the sudden appearance of Stephen's imposter. The divine turtle peeked its head out of his pocket. If this continues, the number of participants will keep dropping, and it won't be long until the first round ends. Stay hidden and be careful. The turtle unstrapped the demonic blood furnace from its back and sent it into the battlefield littered with corpses. The blood turned into rubies and fell into the cauldron. The ancient cultivators couldn't see the cauldron, but they could sense someone or something stealing their meal. They rushed to the edge of the battlefield to search for the thief. Besides the turtle, no one else was interested in the dead bodies. The participants steered clear of where the ancient cultivators were rampaging. They had no idea what was happening, but they didn't want to find out. After a fruitless search, the ancient cultivators decided to feast before dealing with the participants. They couldn't see the cauldron because it repelled spiritual energy, but they were able to sense its presence. Left with no other choice, the turtle retrieved the cauldron. Thorin was locked in a battle with the participants. A cage of energy surrounded him. No matter which direction he went, he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. But he had no intention of moving. His skin glowed. As the dim light spread, an invisible spatial fluctuation swallowed the cage. Ever since he ascended, the spatial fluctuations he created were less noticeable and blended in with the environment. Are you sure you're going to waste all your energy on me? There are other participants hiding out there. Even if you kill me, you have other enemies waiting for you. Thorin's psychological tactic was effective. The participants slowed their assault. As for those who weren't deterred and kept going, Thorin relied on his spatial fluctuations to change the trajectory of their attacks. Liam scrutinized Stephen's imposter. No matter how hard he looked, the young man was a perfect replica. It wouldn't be easy to deal with him if he and Stephen ever met. Liam drew his blade and braced himself for a confrontation. I'm going to test him and find out who he really is. Don't do anything crazy, Stephen warned. Blend in with the crowd and don't get close. Okay. Liam rushed into the crowd and tossed a ball of fire at the young man, doing the exact opposite of what Stephen had said. Thorin dispersed the flames with a casual wave of his hand. Who are you? Your cultivation is so low that I can barely sense it. I don't know where you stole an invitation from, but becoming a participant was a mistake. The other participants leveled Liam with a confused look. It was unusual for a cultivator below the level of ascension to participate in the competition. Liam stood his ground. My cultivation might be low, but at least I'm not afraid to show my face. You, on the other hand, are a coward who hides behind disguises. Discussion broke out among the participants. What's going on? Do you know who that man is? Tell us what you know so we can take him down together. Liam held up his intricate necklace to show the crowd. The prophet has 2 students. I'm one of them. He pointed at Stephen's imposter. And he's imitating the other student. See his neck? He doesn't have a necklace. He's a fake. He disguised himself as the prophet's student to sow discord. Realization dawned on the participants. The prophet specialized in divining the future, not combat. This was a fact everyone in the realm knew. It wasn't strange for his students to have low cultivations. They might be weak now, but their potential was limitless. No one doubted Liam's words. His necklace was proof of his identity. Thorin fixed Liam with a chilling glare. Stephen and his lackeys were always getting in the way of the human realm, and now they were doing the same thing here. Thorin threw his sword at Liam with blinding speed and pierced his heart. The wooden totems around him burst into sawdust. Liam vanished and reappeared behind Thorin with both blades unsheathed. The turtle in his pocket condensed a shell above Thorin. It crashed into his back, and he almost lost his balance. With Liam taking the lead, the other participants regained their motivation. Just as they were about to charge at Thorin, he inserted his sword into the ground, and an explosion shook the ruins. He detonated a mineral vein underground to amplify the explosions. The dust and shockwaves obstructed the participants' views. Thorin seized the opportunity and dashed into the forest. His plan had failed, and sticking around would be pointless. He needed to conserve his energy to prepare for the upcoming rounds. The ancient cultivators had just finished their meal. The explosion stimulated the desire to kill. Though once again they charged at the participants, and another chaotic battle broke out. Meanwhile, the audience was getting bored. Chaotic battles were bloody and destructive, but they didn't necessarily reflect a cultivator's strengths. They were looking for talents, not brutes with no brains. The elder came down the stairs and went to the 3 emissaries. What's the situation? How many participants are left? The emissaries respectfully stood up as a group of masked cultivators from the Mystic Covenant entered the hall. There are around 2,800 people left. The ancient cultivators are ingesting the corpses to restore their strength. They haven't had a breakthrough with the defensive array surrounding the ruins yet. The elder decided to end the first round and activate the teleportation array. Pulsating spheres of light appeared throughout the ruins. When they fell on the participants, they wouldn't be brought back to the courtyard in front of the temple. The speed and trajectory of the spheres depended on various factors. The participants would have to survive until they made contact with the light. Those who held on a bit longer would make it back to the surface, while those who didn't would rest eternally in the holy ruins as food for the ancient cultivators. The elders instructed the team of the Mystic Covenant to head to the ruins to check on the defensive array and test the ancient cultivators. Before the berserkers' arrival, the faction had soaked their bodies in a special liquid. They also became indestructible after continuous strengthening, and trapping them in the ruins with the defensive array was the only way to imprison them. After their betrayal, the faction had destroyed all evidence of the strengthening liquid to prevent history from repeating itself. As the participants returned to the courtyard, the emissaries gave them medicinal pills to recover. They advised those whose injury were too severe to forfeit and head to the hospital for treatment. The participants who made it back first were considered luckier than the others. They had more time to recover and adjust their condition before the next round began. Liam placed the little turtle back in his pocket and waved at Stephen with a beaming smile. He wasn't fazed after nearly dying several times in the ruins. In contrast, Stephen had been a bundle of nerves during the entire first round. His concerns were slightly alleviated when he saw Liam running to him safe and sound, but not by much. He was the one who had invited Liam to the Elysian realm. He couldn't let anything happen to him. He'd promised the Leviathan unit's leader that he'd bring him back safely. "I think you should sit the next round out. It's too dangerous." Liam shook his head. Participating in the competition was an experience he needed. Watching wouldn't be as beneficial as experiencing it himself. Not to mention, he'd hid for most of the first round and was still in peak condition. "I'll wait until they announce the next round before deciding." Liam sat next to Stephen and made himself comfortable. The chairs in the lounge prepared for Mariah were well-furnished and plush. The audience sitting by the lake wasn't aware of the intense conflict taking place underground. The Elder had cast an interference array to prevent their spiritual energies from prying into the faction's secrets. Stephen had left the Threadworm's iron sand in the ruins, but he wasn't interested in the Mystic Covenant's internal strife. He was busy searching for the imposter. There was no sign of him on the surface. "If he's not here, then he's in the ruins. I don't think we'll be able to find him before the next round." Liam had a feeling that the imposter was intentionally staying behind. What if he's evading the teleportation array on purpose? Thorin steered clear of the battle between the Mystic Covenant and the ancient cultivators. Before he broke through to the true immortal realm, he had salvaged a handful of talismans that Dylus had given him before he died and created a new weapon. He turned the talismans into a seal with the ability to control. After Thorin's disguise was exposed, he'd escaped deeper into the ruins and found the participants in hiding. He'd ambushed them and tested his new weapon. When he placed his seals on their bodies, their eyes dimmed and he gained control over them. The participants stood beside Thorin as he fiddled with the seals in his hand. Their eyes were hazy with no signs of life. They were like walking corpses. The Holy Ruins was an abandoned ancient battlefield. No one would discover his experiments. While the Mystic Covenant and the ancient cultivators were fighting it out, he planned to use the participants under his control to search the ruins for relics left behind from the war. Thorin drew an arc with his sword, and a faint purple light entered the soil to begin his search. Stephen's spiritual energy was still infused in the Threadworm's iron sand. After an extensive search, he finally found the imposter in the depths of the ruins surrounded by 30 participants. He initially guessed the imposter had rallied a team to search for a way out, but then they started to dig. Through the dirt, he realized they were looking for something. The spheres of light from the teleportation array didn't reach this part of the ruins. Theoretically, if they were searching for an escape route, they should be running in the other direction, back to the skeletons and the ancient cultivators. Stephen didn't know if the imposter had information on an ancient relic buried in the ruins, but either way, it was clear that he was planning something, and it was most likely a scheme against him. The sand swirled into a storm of metallic fragments, sweeping the bones scattered over the ground into the wind. The participants continued to dig as danger approached. Thorin was surprised that another participant was still here. He rushed into the storm, releasing spatial fluctuations as he passed. The wind and bones brushed past him, missing their target by a few inches. At Thorin's command, the participants stopped digging and focused on the storm. On the surface, Stephen and Liam stared into the lake. The interference was still in effect. The audience couldn't see what was happening in the ruins. The imposter was strong enough to pass through the storm without a weapon. It wasn't a good idea to fight him head-on. The storm disappeared with the help of the participants. Instead of searching for the culprit, they returned to their task and dug through the soil to look for anything valuable. Thorin relaxed when he realized that the sand was a puppet. No wonder it was so weak. The sand condensed into a warrior and charged at Thorin. When his sword tore through its body, the grains of sand instantly reformed. At such a close range, its fist also landed square on Thorin's chest, but it didn't do any damage. Before he could attack again, Stephen remotely controlled the sand and ran away. In the span of a few seconds, he reached the clearing where the team from the Mystic Covenant and the ancient cultivators were fighting. Hundreds of rounds had passed, but the team hadn't landed a single scratch on the ancient cultivators. Just as they were about to leave and check on the defensive array, a warrior made of sand dashed past them. The team's captain was alarmed. He thought the participants had left the ruins already. If some of them were still here, that could only mean they were investigating the Mystic Covenant's internal conflicts. The captain divided his subordinates into 4 groups. The 3 groups would inspect the defensive array and search for the remaining participants, while he and the 4th group would stay here to fend off the ancient cultivators. Thorin's plans were halted by yet another interruption. The team from the Mystic Covenant surrounded him and the participants. "Why are you all still here? The other participants have already left." "I don't remember a rule prohibiting me from staying," Thorin said. "The Holy Ruins is a mysterious place. I just wanted to stay a bit longer to train." The team frowned. From his bold excuse, it was obvious he didn't respect their faction. "If you really want to train, we'll help you." One team member separated from the group, his figure blurring and reappearing behind Thorin. He slammed his palm into his back and forcefully infused his energy inside him. Thorin felt like 1,000 needles were piercing his internal organs. "Who exactly are you?" he demanded through clenched teeth. "Did the organizers send you?" "That's none of your business. Go back to the surface." The team member grabbed Thorin's collar and tossed him into a sphere of light from the teleportation array. Within the next 2 hours, the team found all of the remaining participants and sent them back to the courtyard. Stephen couldn't sit still, knowing that one of the participants was impersonating him. He materialized his sword and went to the resting area to find the imposter. Vivian jumped out of her seat and dragged him back to the lounge. "Calm down. The 2nd round is about to begin. Don't pick a fight. He's stronger than you." Stephen's imposter didn't go unnoticed. The audience spotted 2 participants with an uncanny resemblance. One was sitting in the VIP lounge, while the other was unconscious in the rest area. The emissaries were the only ones with access to the participants' registration details. The information wasn't released to the public. "He attacked the staff from the Mystic Covenant," Stephen grumbled in his seat. "If I let him go, I'll be blamed for everything he does. He almost turned every participant in the 1st round against me." Liam gestured to the rest area. "Don't worry about it. Most of them know there's an imposter going around pretending to be the Prophet's student. The Asuras are a bigger issue. I saw them in the rest area when I was passing by." During the 1st round, Stephen had been so caught up in looking for Liam that he'd forgotten about the Asuras. Turns out they have connections with the city lords. The Elysian realm isn't all that different from our world. The imposter was at most a petty grudge for the time being. Stephen had more important things to worry about, like the Asuras and the Bowen family. Little did he know that the Sheridan family was also targeting him. When most of the participants were recovered, the emissaries announced the 2nd round. Every remaining participant will be teleported to another location. Your task is to survive until the time is up. Fighting is allowed, but medicinal pills are prohibited. Those who violate the rules will be punished. Prohibiting medicinal pills somewhat evened the playing field. There were some participants whose cultivations weren't up to par, but they relied on their family background to purchase medicinal pills to make up for their lack of skill. After half an hour of deliberation, no one surrendered. The emissaries casted a teleportation array, and the participants entered one by one. On the other side, they found themselves on top of a massive metallic cube floating in the sky. The surfaces were as smooth and reflective as a mirror. Every participant was reflected. Everyone had a tacit understanding to maintain a certain distance from each other and avoid standing near the edge. Kagan led his team of Asuras over to Stephen aggressively. Because of one human cultivator, the Asuras were at risk of extinction, and the beasts were running rampant on their land. With every passing day, Kagan's hatred grew stronger. He was on the verge of exploding. Taking his revenge was important, but the Asura King had ordered them to join the expeditionary team. We meet again. It seems enemies are fated to run into each other. I don't think you'd have the courage to participate. It doesn't matter how strong the cultivators in the human realm are, or how many of them there are. The limit for humans in our era is ascension. Going beyond is impossible. Kagan's gaze shifted to Liam. For all the trouble Stephen had caused in the Asura realm, he'd only brought one follower with him, and he hadn't reached the level of ascension. It was clear that Stephen was a pushover who couldn't fight back. Maybe the other participants would kill him off, and the Asuras wouldn't need to lift a finger. The human realm won't exist for much longer, and you will die with your world. Stephen tightened his grip on his sword. Now what makes you so confident? Tension filled the air, but their confrontation was cut short when the clouds parted. The other participants weren't paying attention to their conflict. They were focused on the metallic cube. It was noon, and the sun was high in the sky. The metallic surface reflected the sunlight, and the temperature rose sharply as the minutes passed. Everyone looked down. The soles of their boots were beginning to burn. They suspected that an amplification array had been set up for energy-rich crystals had been placed inside the cube. Stephen sensed the scorching heat coming from the beams of light. He knew right away that he wouldn't be able to absorb the light with the slits on his palms. He was a human made of flesh and blood. He couldn't compete with the power of nature, especially not when it was amplified by over 1,000 times. Liam glanced down at the smooth, reflective surface. Is it our task to stand here and survive? Maybe, but it won't be that simple, Stephen said. We don't know how long we'll have to stay here. We'll need to use our inner energy to resist the heat. Our stamina will continue to drain, and some of the participants might try to start a fight. Stephen and Liam persisted and endured the heat for half a day. Maybe it was because the other participants wanted to preserve their energy, but no fights broke out. When night fell, the metallic surface reflected the moon's radiance. The temperature dropped rapidly, and the chill in the air penetrated every participant's bones. To prevent their blood from freezing, they condensed a barrier of heat using their inner energy. A few participants began to complain. I think I'm at my limit. The alternating heat and cold will cause internal injuries soon. Are you going to give up? What if the second round ends tomorrow? I don't have a choice. Giving up is better than losing my life. The Mystic Covenant usually holds a competition to recruit members once every 10 years. I'll have another chance after training some more. One participant took the lead and surrendered, followed by several others. Light enveloped them and brought them back to the ground. As the night went on, participants continued to surrender, and the surface of the cube became less crowded. After midnight, there were less than 100 participants remaining. The Asuras were accustomed to living in extreme environments, so they'd retained most of their energy. Kagan looked around and found Stephen in the distance. He'd ordered the Asuras to surround him and get rid of him once and for all. The Asuras unsheathed their swords and rushed towards Stephen. He sensed them coming and brushed his thumb over the fangs on the hilt of his sword. A herd of snow leopards condensed in front of the Asuras, blocking their path. Finally making your move? I was getting tired of waiting. The Asuras glowered at him. You think you're something just because the celestial beast gave you a trinket? Your energy reserves are half empty. Stephen looked past them and met Kagan's gaze. He knew their chief was waiting in the back to land a finishing blow after depleting his energy. The snow leopards thrived in cold environments. They moved as fast as lightning and aimed for the Asura's necks. They blocked the leopard's snapping jaws with their swords, and a contest of strength followed. Neither the leopards nor the Asuras were willing to concede. Stephen unleashed a blade of energy, targeting the Asura's knees. They flipped in the air, landed on the leopards' backs, and plunged their swords into their flesh. The necklace of beast fangs condensed the phantoms of beast by borrowing their energy. Even if the phantoms were destroyed in battle, their real bodies wouldn't suffer any damage. The phantoms dispersed into gusts of icy wind. When it formed a thick layer of ice on the Asura's limbs, Liam and the divine turtle took their cue to join the fight. A large turtle shell fell from the sky and trapped the Asuras inside. An emerald tree branch grew from a black wooden totem and wrapped around them to hold them in place. The Asuras exerted a small amount of strength to shatter the ice and crush the branches. They gripped their swords and slashed at the turtle shell. Its color began to dim. A glowing, rotating diagram condensed in the sky and crashed into the shell. It shattered into fragments of light, and the Asuras regained their freedom. Stephen's imposter was here to join the brawl. You have more enemies than you can count. There's no place for you in the Elysian realm. What about you? You're impersonating me. If I don't belong here, you don't either, Stephen retorted. Thorin laughed. You still haven't guessed my identity yet? What a shame. You'll die without ever knowing. Thorin drew an arc with his sword. A blade of light swept towards Stephen's left shoulder. He stepped to the side and dodged. Thorin was familiar with his elusive technique. This wasn't the first time Stephen avoided his strike at the last minute with subtle movements. He'd reached the level of ascension. He couldn't understand how Stephen was still avoiding his attacks so easily. Stephen was about to counterattack when Kagan joined the fight and unleashed a beam of light on his face. An explosion lit up the night sky. The participants watching from the sidelines took a cautious step back. If they were caught up in the conflict, their energy would drain faster. At the last minute, Liam had condensed a wooden totem in front of Stephen to transfer the damage. There's too many of them. If we use a metallic slab, we won't have to stay on the surface. Stephen grasped his meaning. Liam put the turtle back in his pocket and rushed to the edge of the cube, and Stephen jumped. Thorin and Kagan ran after them and peered over the edge. There was nothing to see except clouds. When they reached out with their auras, an interference array disrupted their senses. "Where did they go?" Kagan asked. "Did they kill themselves, or did they surrender? Does the metallic surface not attack during the night?" "He's cunning. Focus on getting through this round. If he's alive, we'll meet again," Thorin said, walking away. He was disgusted that he had to join forces with the Asuras to fight Stephen. First, he'd gone against his faction's objectives by ascending, and now he had to work together with the very enemy who'd caused their downfall. He was beginning to realize that there was a fine line between ideals and revenge. He was determined to slaughter the Asuras after he killed Stephen. When Stephen leaped off the cube, he transformed the metallic slab Fieri had given him into a pair of gloves and boots for him and Liam. They clung to the bottom of the cube through magnetic attraction. None of the other participants could leave the surface, so no one would find them here. Stephen was more confident that they would last until the end of the second round. "I brought the Berserker's blessing with me. I have more control over its power now that I've ascended. I'll transfer some of it to you." Liam was a little dejected. "I can't match up to the other participants in a fight, and now I have to rely on an eyeball. Even if I pass this round, I might need to surrender at some point. Victory and defeat are both common outcomes in the military. Surviving is an achievement. Don't forget that. You're doing well." Out of 9,000 participants in the first round, less than a third had returned alive from the ruins. Strength wasn't a decisive factor. Knowledge, experience, and skill were just as important, and Liam had all three. As the sun rose and a new day began, the participants' energy drained like an overflowing dam. More participants surrendered as the day went on. Ever since Stephen and Liam clung to the bottom of the cube, no one else had come to bother them, and no other fight had broken out on the surface. The participants understood that fighting amongst themselves would lead into their energy draining faster. The audience by the lake couldn't see much. The clouds surrounding the metallic cube blocked their view. Vivian was worried about Stephen and Liam. A few hundred participants had already forfeited. His father didn't have high hopes either. He'd sent his subordinates to investigate Harmonia Pavilion when Stephen first opened his store, but it didn't take a genius to know that his business was a failure. Not only was his cultivation low, but he also had no talent for business. The elder was sitting next to the emissaries with his eyes closed in a meditative state. He wasn't interested in the second round. The team he'd sent to the ruins came back to report. They'd failed to kill the ancient cultivators, but they'd confirmed that the defensive array was functioning as it should. The elder expected this. With so many bodies lying around as food, it won't be long until they recover. They'll come for our faction in the near future. Should we send reinforcements to the ruins to take care of them? The captain of the team asked. I'll need to discuss that with the other elders. We should wrap up the recruitment first. After the first round, the holy ruins were once again enveloped in darkness. The ancient cultivators had eaten their fill, and power surged within them. They regained some of their rationality. Next on the agenda was finding a suitable opponent to vent their overflowing power. The ancient cultivators looked up at the ceiling of rock. They couldn't see the defensive array, but they could feel it. The array was unshakable. It separated the ruins from the Haven domain. Don't tell me we're stuck here for the rest of our lives. We might as well search for another exit. We have nothing better to do anyway. There has to be another way out. We used to be miners in our spare time. We'll find it. When they weren't on a mission, there was no different from ordinary people. They completed missions from the Mystic Covenant at record speed with high efficiency. This left them with an abundance of free time, which they spent mining. With their experience, it didn't take them long to find traces of the battle between Thorin and the other participants. Before they could gang up on him, he'd used his sword to detonate a mineral vein deep underground and coincidentally revealed a connecting tunnel. Where does this tunnel lead to? We've been trapped here for a long time, but I've never seen it before. There are bones everywhere. They probably covered the tunnel. The stronger a cultivator, the more resources they needed to progress and improve. The Elysian realm valued ores and crystals, and every array had an innate built-in feature to preserve mineral veins. The tunnel was thousands of years old, but animals, critters, and vegetation were nowhere in sight. As the ancient cultivators ventured deeper, the path sloped downwards. Do you think this tunnel is connected to a volcano? I don't sense any heat from magma. It could be leading to an underground river. If we follow the flow of water, we'll eventually make it to the ocean. They were filled with curiosity and anticipation. If they returned to the surface, they'd have a shot at taking down the Mystic Covenant. As the heat from the sun's rays intensified, the participants were forced to get creative to stay in the running. Some relied on their body's defenses to withstand the heat, while others converted the high temperatures into energy that continuously circulated through their meridians, and the rest used their unique attributes of their weapons and equipment. As for Stephen, he used the Berserker's blessing instead of consuming his inner energy. It fueled him with a stable supply of power. The Berserker was a unique and powerful group of ancient cultivators. Their body parts lived on even after death. "This can't go on forever. I think the organizers have something else planned." "I don't care what it is as long as it doesn't affect us," Liam said with a slight slur to his voice. He'd never been this exhausted in his life. "I feel like I've been drained. I don't know how long it'll take me to recover my inner energy when we get back." Stephen was transferring the power from the Berserker's blessing to Liam, but it couldn't supply him with extra energy. It formed a barrier against the heat, so he didn't have to use energy to resist the scorching temperatures. But clinging to the bottom of the cube took energy, and he was running dangerously low. Their worst fears came true when dark clouds gathered overhead. A storm of lightning and thunder swept over the cube. Lightning struck the metallic surface, and electricity flared in every direction. The rain was corrosive, and the torrential winds were as sharp as blades. The participants were filled with despair. How are we going to survive this? They're forcing us to surrender. We don't have enough energy to keep our barriers in place for long. It's time to give up. Even the participants who were well prepared with all sorts of equipment were at a loss. Some of them used their armor as an umbrella. It blocked the acidic rain, but it wasn't that effective against the wind. Thanks to Liam's quick thinking, he and Stephen were shielded from the storm at the bottom of the cube. The electricity from the lightning was absorbed into the threadworm's iron sand, coating their skin. The number of participants surrendering rose rapidly. Some didn't have a chance to give up. The lightning turned them to ashes before they could get the words out. The audience by the lake stared at the sky with blank expressions. They couldn't see anything past the clouds, and the storm decreased their visibility even more. As for the participants who surrendered and returned to the ground in failure, their backers kicked them to the curb and cut ties. They were disqualified in the second round. What a waste of time. The city lord has high expectations of them, and I'm the one who recommended them. We'll just have to wait until the next recruitment in 10 years. In a world where the strong were respected, no one paid the participants who surrendered any mind. Their task was to join the expeditionary team, and they'd failed. Many of them would be punished by the wealthy families they worked for. After the storm, there were only 300 participants left on the cube. It was a drastic drop from the original 10,001 participants. The elder opened his eyes and stared at the sky. Some of the participants have performed well. They won't even need to compete in the other rounds. They're qualified to join the expeditionary team. Should we let them know? The first emissary asked. No need. The audience came all the way to the Haven domain to watch an exciting competition. Let the remaining participants give them a good show. A luxurious motorcade pulled up to the entrance of the Silent Priest Temple. The participants with mediocre aptitudes had mostly been eliminated. Those remaining had outstanding potential. Several elders from the Mystic Covenant were here to select talented students to take under their wing. The elder hosting the recruitment handed them the profiles of the remaining 300 participants. It recorded the techniques they used during the first and second rounds in great detail. The elders reviewed the document with serious expressions. Choosing the right student was important. These two weaklings are the prophet students. Their cultivations are low, but they have a strong backer. They've survived until now. That proves they're not your ordinary cultivators. Maybe their mounts are dragons. The prophet has never been interested in worldly affairs. Why did he suddenly take in 2 students? Perhaps he divined their future and thought they were interesting. Participants with prestigious backgrounds were everywhere, but Stephen and Liam stood out from the rest. Becoming a cultivator was a profound and complex career. There were numerous specialties. It was common for a cultivator to learn from multiple teachers to be more well-rounded. I want Stephen Adams. Can you do me a favor and let him be my student? Why do you always get to choose first? Stop arguing. I'm on good terms with the prophet. It makes more sense for Stephen Adams and Liam Pierre to become my students. What are you talking about? That's not a legitimate justification. Before the second round ended, Stephen and Liam had become the most popular participants. The elders hoped to establish a friendly teacher and student relationship with either Stephen or Liam to form a connection with the prophet. With his ability to divine the future, it would be beneficial to their cultivation. In the sky, a series of dull explosions rang out from inside the metallic cube. The participants staggered as the platform shook. Their eyes widened in horror when jagged cracks tore across the metallic surface. What's going on? Is something coming? Do we have to fight? I barely have any energy left. Are they trying to kill us? There were no beasts or terrifying entities to face. The metallic cube simply shattered, plunging the participants into a free fall and forcing them to use the last of their energy reserves to stay afloat. Stephen summoned the ice dragon, and he and Liam landed safely on its back. From up here, they had a full view of the Haven domain. Flying is prohibited in the cities. If it weren't for recruitment, we wouldn't have had the chance to experience this view. Whoever sets this rule is too uptight. There have to be some expectations. If I make it to the expeditionary team, this is the first rule I'll make adjustments to. Liam laughed in amusement. We don't know how many rounds are left. Who knows what crazy challenge we'll have to face next? Stephen and Liam didn't have time to take in the view. The ice dragon suddenly lowered its altitude and flew to the left. Kagan and the Asoras were standing on top of their swords, heading their way. You have that much energy left in you? Stephen called out with a groan. The second round's over. Did you hear the organizers announce it's over? As far as I know, this round is still ongoing. It's perfectly reasonable for me to tear you to shreds. Kagan couldn't give up this opportunity to get rid of Stephen. As the Asoras descended at high speed, they condensed blood-red skulls and threw them at the ice dragon. When it dodged, the skulls exploded and sent shockwaves rippling through the air. Stephen was in better condition than most of the remaining participants. He condensed a phantom of the fire phoenix at Phantasma Isle. Ever since he'd encountered the divine guardian beast underwater, he was able to imitate and manifest its power. The phoenix flapped its wings and created a 7-colored barrier. The Asora's swords were sharp, but they couldn't scatter the light. Kagan took out a brass bell and shook it back and forth. A clear and melodious tune echoed in the air. Stephen and Liam's surroundings blurred, and a hazy sensation clouded their minds. The Asora king had given Kagan a trove of unusual weapons to help the Asoras during the recruitment. Stabilize your mental energy and shut off your perception, the ice dragon said urgently. It flapped its wings and conjured a blizzard, hoping to use the howling winds to counter the bell's interference. At the same time, it increased its speed and flew towards the ground. Seeing that Stephen was in no condition to defend himself, the ghost fire in his sword launched an attack on its own. It absorbed the sun's rays and released scorching beams of light at the Asoras. They screamed as their skin burned. The ice dragon flew faster and landed safely on the ground. The short confrontation ended just like that. When all the participants returned to the rest area, the emissaries announced the end of the second round. Congratulations to everyone who passed the second round. The next round will begin a week later. You may stay at the Silent Priest Temple or return to your residences until then. The participants were confused. Where was the next venue? Why did the organizers need a week to prepare? They had many questions, but no one came forward to answer. The staff gave them medicinal pills and walked away. Vivian found Stephen in the rest area among the crowd of participants. Liam was curled up next to him on the bench, unconscious. Concern flickered in Vivian's eyes. What happened? Are you okay? Is your friend hurt? Stephen ran a hand through his hair in frustration as the turtle scuttled around Liam, assessing his condition. We're fine. He's just tired. We have too many enemies out to get us. I don't know how to handle them all. Really? I heard there wasn't that much fighting going on up there. That wasn't the case for us. You can worry about that later. You and your friend should focus on finding somewhere to stay and recover. Later in the day, the hotels near the Silent Priest Temple were fully booked. Most of the participants reserved a room after the second round, prepared to receive more information from the Mystic Covenant at any time. Liam was exhausted after the second round. He dragged himself to his room at the hotel and fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. The iridescent dragon and the turtle stayed by his side as his bodyguards to oversee his recovery. There were some participants who gave Stephen the side-eye when he passed. Most of them lived close to one another, so receiving glares from competitors was inevitable. The Mystic Covenant had imposed a restriction before everyone went their separate ways after the second round. Fighting was prohibited. Liam was asleep, and Stephen had nothing to do while he waited for the next round to begin, so he went to the restaurant across the hotel for lunch to pass the time. While he was looking over the menu, Vivian walked into the restaurant and spotted him at the table by the window. She decided to join him for lunch and offered to pay since she knew he was weak and barely had enough funds to scrape by. Stephen ordered every delicacy on the menu. Vivian grimaced as she calculated her expenses for the month. "I shouldn't have joined you. You're spending money like water." She pointed to the table full of dishes. "Can you eat all of this?" "Of course I can," Stephen said, picking up his fork. He was ready to dig in. "By the way, is Shadow still trying to marry you? He's not even trying to hide his hostility towards me." Vivian sighed. After the recruitment, her scandal with Stephen would be exposed, and her father would make her go on blind dates. She was the heir, and she needed to find a partner who was capable of taking over the family business. Her life of freedom would soon be over. Just hearing his name makes me annoyed. In the next round, you'll be up against the successors of wealthy families in Minori City. Don't provoke them too much. Why? Don't you want to get rid of all the troublemakers? When doing business, you need to form a friendly relationship with all your competitors. It's not a good idea to make enemies wherever you go. Stephen nodded along. With his cultivation, there was no place to go easy on anyone. "The weapon Mariah made me will come in handy soon. He's quite talented. Why is he retiring so early?" "You think forging weapons is an easy job? He's earned enough money to last him more than one lifetime. It's time for him to enjoy life. The 5 domains have been secretly trying to get him to form an exclusive contract with them to stop him from forging weapons for their competitors. The world may seem peaceful, but competition is fierce between the domains. Gathering weapons and preparing for war is a necessity." The Bellantine family's mercenaries had carried out a variety of odd jobs across the Elysian realm. They had access to knowledge that the public didn't. The Haven domain was neutral, but they wouldn't hesitate to defend their territory if war broke out. However, minor conflicts like competing for Mariah's exclusive contract weren't worth their attention. They turned a blind eye. "If one of the domains succeeds in roping Mariah to their side, who would benefit?" Stephen asked. "The ambitious city lords, of course. The ranking of their territories depends on the region, population, and resources, but the most crucial factor is the number of above-average cultivators. Small-scale conflicts to compete for resources are allowed, because it'll benefit the respective city's reserves. When these conflicts happen, cultivators are needed. Every domain has its fair share of mineral veins and precious herbs in the deep mountains. The stronger cultivators are given the best resources and all kinds of privileges. In other words, there are no problems that can't be resolved with strength, and stronger cultivators are highly valued. My father's always looking for ways to develop the family business to earn more money and get more valuable resources, but everyone in his position is like that. Don't take his criticisms to heart. He's just looking out for the family." Stephen shrugged. "I didn't think too much of it. I don't care what he thinks about me either. We're not really in a relationship." Vivian propped her elbows on the table and leaned forward with anticipation. "So when are you going to get stronger? You cultivate really fast. If people find out I have a dependable, powerful cultivator as my friend, they'll stop bothering me." "You make it sound easy. I can probably hold my own against people like Shadow if it's one-on-one, but they always go around with a crowd of bodyguards. It's impossible." Vivian sat back in her chair, disappointed. Such is life. Nothing is simple around here. A young man with white hair walked over with a smile, interrupting their conversation. No one invited him, but he shamelessly sat next to Stephen. Stephen poured him a glass of wine. He couldn't sense the young man's aura, but his presence was as insurmountable as a mountain. "Feel free to join us," he said respectfully. The young man downed the wine in one gulp. "Unlike most young people these days, you have good manners towards your seniors. I'm Ren, an elder from the Mystic Covenant. I wasn't there to see it, but I reviewed a record of your performance during the second round in your profile. You're pretty skilled. What plans do you have for the future?" Stephen was a bit nervous knowing that the young man was an elder from Mystic Covenant. Ren looked young, but he was much older than him and Vivian. "I haven't decided yet." You see, when our faction holds a recruitment to select members for our expeditionary team, the elders are allowed to take any participant of their choosing under their wing. Do you have any plans to learn from a specific elder? I'm not sure. Is this something we can decide before the competition ends? Ren nodded with a smile. He didn't care about Stephen's skills. His only goal was to establish a friendly connection with the Dragon Clan's prophet. When participants are selected to join the expeditionary team, they start out as external members, and they're given a few cultivation manuals for their efforts. The elders' students are different. They receive personal training, and they're treated like VIPs. After a few years, most elders give up their positions, and one of their students is selected for a promotion. It's a shortcut to entering the management ranks of the faction. Ren's flowery speech was so eloquent that most people wouldn't think twice before accepting his offer. But Stephen didn't want to be hasty. The Mystic Covenant maintained the peace of the Six Realms. Joining their cause was an important decision to make. The prophet is focusing on his cultivation these days, so he doesn't have time to train me. There are a lot of things I don't know. But you are his student. He must have taught you essential life skills, like the basics of divining the future. The most the prophet had ever given Stephen was a fraction of his power, which he'd infused into the Book of Destiny. In the Elysian realm, Stephen's cultivation was lower than most people around him. He couldn't divine their future if there was a gap between them. Unfortunately, my skills are mediocre. I haven't learned that much. It's fine. You're young. There's plenty of room for improvement. You don't need to give me an answer right away. Think it over and let me know when you've decided. Ren took Stephen's rejection in stride. He kept the conversation going and rambled about the sights he'd seen across the realm. He freeloaded a meal and left in high spirits. There was nothing left on the table for Stephen and Vivian. When they finally left the restaurant after ordering another round of dishes, they saw a girl looking in their direction with a smile on her face. Stephen recognized her. She was his first customer at the jewelry store, and her hobby was gossiping. Long time no see, Stephen. Did you meet my teacher? How did it go? Are we going to be fellow students in the future? You're a student from the Mystic Covenant? Stephen reached out with his aura suspiciously. The girl's cultivation was nowhere near Ren's. It was around the level of ascension. Shouldn't members of the Mystic Covenant be swamped with work? She had so much free time on her hands that she waited for Shaddle all day at his store just to see when he would come back. Are you a fake student? You know, like those people who collect information from the shadows with a prestigious title to cover up their real identities? Or did you just get in the back door? You don't have the qualities of a professional at all. You're just a busybody who likes to gossip. The girl frowned. In truth, Stephen had hit the nail on the head. She was a precious daughter of an elder in the Mystic Covenant and was temporarily labeled as Ren's student. Because of her background, she rarely received dangerous missions. Assigning her the task of collecting information was only an excuse to send her out for a stroll, instead of causing trouble in the faction. A gentleman should have some tact. In terms of seniority, I rank higher than you. We're not fellow students. I haven't decided to take your teacher up on his offer yet. I'm going to wait until the recruitment's over. Vivian wasn't that involved in the family business, but as the daughter of a successful businessman, her senses were sharp. She could tell that the girl had an extraordinary background. We're newcomers to the Haven domain. Do you have some time? If you don't mind, can you show us around? The girl smiled brightly at Vivian. Sure, I'm Yvonne. Nice to meet you. It just so happens that I have a lot of things I want to ask Stephen about. With no further explanation, Yvonne pulled Stephen and Vivian to her car, stepped on the accelerator, and sped towards the highway. The faction never assigned her complicated tasks. She wanted to complete a difficult mission to prove herself and change everyone's impression of her. She'd pestered Ren's other students to help her, but they never had time. Vivian looked out the window. Miss Yvonne, where are we going? To a mountain range in the northeast. I'm investigating the spatial fluctuations there. You're braver than you look, Stephen commented. Aren't you afraid you'll accidentally be transported to another realm? Yvonne glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Every ascender and every cultivator at the level of ascension will experience traveling through realms at some point. Don't tell me you're afraid. The third round will start in a week. If you're worried about a few spatial fluctuations, you might as well forfeit now. Yvonne didn't host the Mystic Covenant's recruitments, but she had some understanding of how they were carried out. When the number of participants dropped to a certain extent, the host would arrange specific venues to encourage conflict. The expeditionaries' team's duties was to travel to other realms to capture criminals. If the participants couldn't handle unexpected danger, they weren't qualified to join the team. At the mention of the third round, Stephen thought about the imposter and the Asuras. They weren't easy to deal with, and if he wasn't careful, both him and Liam would be in danger. Things could have easily gone south today when the Asuras attacked them towards the end of the second round. Yvonne took his silence for concern. You don't have to worry about the competition. If the elders are interested in a participant, they'll contact them beforehand and extend an offer to take them on as students. Even if they aren't selected to join the expeditionary team, they'll become members of the faction. My teacher's cultivation is above average compared to his colleagues. You'll learn a lot from him. Stephen didn't reply. He tuned Yvonne out. He was thinking about how to handle the imposter and the Asuras. Vivian took over the conversation. She wanted to help her father promote the family's business. The Mystic Covenant hasn't issued any missions for several months now. There's nothing but our family's mercenaries to do. Do you know what's going on? The higher-ups are busy negotiating with some big shot who calls himself the Asura King, Yvonne said. He says he wants to regain control of the Asura realm and live peacefully with the other species. The Asura King's familiar name pulled Stephen from his reverie. The Asuras were an ambitious and bloodthirsty species. They'd oppressed the beasts and the weaker species in the Asura realm for thousands of years. He doubted it was that easy for them to change. Why is he so confident they'll hear him out? He has leverage, Yvonne explained. He created the Asura realm, but the Asuras aren't the only species there. If he absorbs his realm, the other species will disappear. That'll negatively impact the stability of the 6 realms. In exchange for leaving the realm alone, he wants the Asuras to take back the power from the beasts and become rulers again. Stephen was concerned about Killian and the beasts. The higher-ups of the Mystic Covenant weren't acquainted with the Celestial Beast, and the Asura King had valuable bargaining chips. The issue seemed to have been decided already. Killian and the Beast had put in so much effort to overthrow their oppressor, but if the Mystic Covenant sided with the Asura King, their freedom was as good as over. I heard you learned some of your techniques from the beasts in the Asura realm, Yvonne continued. You have quite a few beasts by your side, too. I wouldn't call it a technique. The Celestial Beast gave me a relic that lets me borrow the beast's power. Stephen's answer made Yvonne more confident that they would be fellow students eventually. Stephen and the Celestial Beast were close enough to be gift-giving terms. That meant they were probably student and teacher. And, in the Elysian realm, the Dragon Clan's prophet had taken him in as a student. These 2 connections proved he had accepted teachers from all walks of life, especially powerful ones. The Celestial Beast was a god, and the Dragon Clan's prophet was a diviner. The Mystic Covenant had a divine status among the 6 realms, and Ren was an elder of the faction. He was more or less on equal footing with the Celestial Beast and the prophet. Based on Stephen's track record, there was no reason for him to turn down the offer. Are you worried about the beasts? It'll be okay, Yvonne said. Even if the higher-ups agree with the Asura King, the hierarchy in the Asura realm won't change that drastically. There has to be a balance of power among the 6 realms. Regardless of their decision, they'll support the beasts in secret. If you end up being chosen to join the expeditionary team, you can visit the Asura realm on a mission, and you'll have the authority to let every species there live in harmony. 3 hours later, they arrived at the mountain range. The roars and howls of beasts hiding in the forest echoed throughout the mountain. Yvonne became Stephen and Vivian's tour guide and led them up a path. Because the vegetation was so dense, she had a hard time finding her destination. What are you looking for? Vivian asked. Maybe we can help. A cave near a stream. It should be around here somewhere. The threadworms appeared beside Stephen and transformed into thousands of miniature clones of themselves. They burrowed into the ground to search. More than 200 years ago, the mountain used to be bustling with visitors and full of life. In its heyday, more than 100,000 miners would visit annually to excavate the rare ores buried underground. At some point, people started disappearing. Hundreds of visitors vanished mysteriously on a daily basis, and their bodies were never found. The first suspect was an aggressive beast. The owner of the mine spent a large sum of money to hire teams of cultivators to escort them up the mountain. They ended up disappearing before the day was over. Rumors about the mysterious disappearances circulated among the public, leading to widespread panic. To prevent the issue from escalating, the authorities sealed off the mine to stop the miners from trekking up the mountain. If I can solve this case from hundreds of years ago, my fellow students will look at me in a new light, Yvonne declared eagerly. Stephen doubted it would be that easy. Don't get your hopes up. There's a reason this case was left unsolved for so long. The threadworms found a cave that matched Yvonne's description 12 miles away. The three of them followed their lead to the cave below the path. A stream flowed nearby. Stephen crouched down and inspected the cave from the edge of the path. The miners didn't dig this cave. There's no sign of sharp tools used. The walls and edges are smooth. It's also not a volcano. There's no lava around. Do you know how many people went missing? Around a third of the miners who went inside never came back out. Yvonne was young, and she wasn't around when the disappearances took place. The information she had was from the case file and hearsay. The simplest way to investigate was to jump down and enter the cave, but exploring a mysterious area with supposed spatial fluctuations was dangerous. The third round was right around the corner. Stephen didn't want to take such a big risk. Neither did Yvonne. She condensed a ball of energy and tossed it at the cave's entrance. A streak of light flashed in the air. The ball of energy vanished when it hit the entrance. What was that? Were you trying to light up the cave? Stephen asked. No, there was supposed to be an explosion. I think a spatial rift absorbed my energy and transported it elsewhere. Stephen reached out with his inner energy to explore the cave from a distance. The interior was deeper than it looked. He couldn't sense the presence of a spatial rift, which meant something else had dispersed Yvonne's energy. A dull tremor sounded from the cave. Should we go down and check it out? The threadworms asked. No, we don't know what's down there. Stephen asked the ice dragon to take out its storage of artillery shells. They were produced and processed by modern factories and assembly lines. There was something in the cave absorbing external energy. He was curious as to how much it could absorb. He threw the lightning-infused artillery shells at the cave. The three of them braced themselves for an explosion, but it didn't come. The artillery shells vanished into the darkness. My guess is there's an array in the cave that can absorb energy and materials, Stephen said. If the miners from the past fell in, their blood and spiritual energy would have been drained in seconds. Yvonne was horrified. You mean they became dried-up corpses? Maybe. Do you know if there are beasts down there? I didn't read anything about that in the case file. Okay, then we'll dig a small canal from the side leading to the stream. When water flows into the cave and fills up the interior, whatever's at the bottom will float up and drift outside. If the missing miners are there, we'll find their bodies in the water tomorrow. Yvonne agreed with Stephen's plan. If he was right, then this was the truth behind the mysterious disappearances hundreds of years ago. Stephen used his sword to carve a deep ravine in the ground, separating the cave from the stream. Water flowed through the entrance. It would take some time for the cave to overflow. They set up camp while they waited. When the sun set, they heard the cries of beasts from the forest. Stephen summoned a pack of wolves using the beast's fangs embedded in the hilt of his sword. They surrounded the three of them in a circle and laid down, staring at the forest to keep watch for beasts. Yvonne cast a curious glance at the wolves. Do you ever use this technique in battle to distract your opponents with beasts? That's not how it works. They're not tools or sacrifices. It's more accurate to call them partners in combat. Whenever I summon beasts using the relic, I'm borrowing a small amount of their spiritual energy. Even if their real bodies don't take damage when the phantoms disappear, the time they spend is transmitted back to them. Stephen made a mental note to make a trip to the Asura realm when he had time and warned Killian about the Asura king's plans. The war between the beasts and the Asuras ended not too long ago, but another conflict was brewing. The water from the stream overflowed into the cave. At this rate, it would take all night for the interior to overflow. They snuggled next to the wolves for warmth and fell asleep. Thousands of feet below ground, the ancient cultivators were slowly climbing up the tunnel. They avoided using any techniques in case the ground caved in and buried them alive. How long do we have to climb? We can't be going in circles, right? I'm marking the walls. I haven't seen any repeats, so we're going the right way. I can feel the defensive array weakening. We are getting further from the ruins. I can't wait to find these old men from the Mystic Covenant and kill them. With them out of the picture, we'll take over the position of head of the faction and command the 6 realms. If it weren't for their firm conviction to take revenge on the Mystic Covenant, they wouldn't have lost their minds completely after being trapped in the ruins for so long. They used to be the strongest squad in the faction. They only had one failure during their career, and that was their betrayal. Don't get ahead of yourself. We've been trapped in the ruins for a long time. The Mystic Covenant is the strongest faction among the 6 realms. Revenge takes time and brains. As they made their way up, they heard the sound of a flowing river. When they climbed some more, they were drenched in ice water. They knew they were almost at the exit. The defensive array separating the holy ruins and the Haven domain had been operating for countless years. It was beginning to weaken at the edges. Stephen had unknowingly blasted a hole through the array with the artillery shells. If it was fully functioning, the ancient cultivators would have wandered the tunnels in circles and never seen the light of day. At least, not for a few more decades. At dawn, Stephen woke up to low growls from the wolves. He sat up and blinked blearily around the clearing. His drowsiness was washed away at the sight of a group of people with a bulking build and long brown fur on their limbs. They were the ancient cultivators he'd seen in the ruins during the first round. His first thought was, how did they escape the ruins? But he didn't have time to ponder his own question. With a few long strides, they were already in front of him. Stephen could feel the wolves trembling against him. Their instincts proved that the ancient cultivators were much stronger than all of them combined. I wasn't expecting you to be the first person we meet in the wilderness. Why are you here? Weren't you eliminated from the competition? Or did you surrender? As ancient cultivators, they had a keen perception. Stephen didn't participate in the first round directly, but they could sense his spiritual energy from the iron sand. Knowing when to yield was a skill. Stephen had witnessed their terrifying strength in the holy ruins, and he wasn't about to test them. I apologize for what happened in the ruins. I was just trying my luck at the recruitment. The ancient cultivators looked at Vivian and Yvonne, who were fast asleep. Then their gazes shifted back to Stephen and the wolves. Your cultivations are too low. It's a waste of time and effort to kill off all of you. But we do have a question for you. Where did you get that eye in your pocket? It belonged to one of our members. Stephen had forgotten he'd placed the Berserker's blessing in his pocket after the second round. There was no fooling the ancient cultivators. He explained the mission at the auction house in detail. I don't know why they wanted the eyes, but I kept one out of curiosity. If you'd like it back, I can give it to you. Keep it. It's of no use to us. The owner is long gone. The dead can't come back to life. Give us your money and all the valuables you have on you and leave the mountain, the ancient cultivators demanded. They'd been hibernating in the holy ruins for years. They had nothing of value of them, and they needed money to get by. Stephen, Vivian, and Yvonne handed over their bank cards and jewelry and returned to the foot of the mountain. They got in the car and sat in silence. After a long moment, Vivian was the first to speak. I think we're screwed. We just freed the mystical covenant's enemies. Yvonne was experienced in getting out of trouble. What are you talking about? We came for a picnic. We didn't do anything except eat and enjoy the scenery. Who's going to believe that? Stephen said, shaking his head. What are we going to do now? Should we tell the Mystic Covenant about them? Vivian started the car. That's the only thing we can do. While the other participants were diligently training to improve their cultivation and prepare for the third round, Stephen was hanging out with a pair of troublemakers and landed himself in a huge mess. The 3 of them almost died today. If the ancient cultivators were in a bad mood, they would have ended up as corpses in the wilderness. When Yvonne drove into the city, Vivian asked her to pull over at a random street corner. She clearly wanted to wash her hands off of the disaster they'd caused. The Mystic Covenant was different from most martial arts factions. They built a luxurious office building in the Haven domain for the elders and the other members for management purposes, while the leaders of the faction lived in a quiet mansion. Yvonne drove past security with Stephen. Even though he wasn't a member, no one dared to stop her. She took him directly to Ren's office. Ren walked up to Yvonne with a smile and patted her head. Why are you 2 together? If you're here to tell me to go easy on him in the third round, I can't honor your request. That's not it. Call everyone over. Something serious has happened. The Mystic Covenant is in danger. Ren heaved a sigh. He had no idea what trouble Yvonne had caused this time, but it couldn't be anything good. This early in the morning? Okay, wait here. He called the other elders into his office, and Yvonne told them what happened on the mountain. She hid certain details. Stephen stayed quiet. He and Vivian were just tagging along to help Yvonne. They were at most witnesses. The atmosphere turned tense. A hot-tempered elder stood up, raring to go. I'll lead a team and wipe them out. 2 other elders tried to calm him down. Stay calm. If it was that easy, we would have trapped them in the ruins for so long after they made their escape here. We should prioritize the recruitment. The entire realm has eyes on us. We need to make sure it goes well. The hot-tempered elder wasn't convinced. So you're saying to let them run loose while the recruitment's going on? Even if you head to the mountain now, they'll be long gone. Their target is our faction. We'll issue missions and let external groups gather information. We represent the 6 realms. The Elysian realm will stand on our side. They won't conspire with a traitor. Aren't you being too optimistic? Wealthy families aren't unconditionally on our side. They bend to power. If they hide those traitors, we'll never find them. Before the recruitment ends, we need to implement passive methods. The elders continued to argue. At the end of the meeting, the minority followed the majority opinion and agreed to put up missions to collect information. Ren walked Stephen to the door. You understand what kind of enemy they are, right? If you join the expeditionary team, you'll have to face people like them all of the time. It's a dangerous job. The path of a cultivator was a treacherous one. The danger was at every corner. If fear was enough to make Stephen turn back, he never would have become a martial artist in the first place. Thank you for the reminder. I'll do my best in the 3rd round and see how it goes. Before leaving, Stephen gathered his courage to ask the question he'd been thinking about all day yesterday. I heard the Asura King is here to negotiate with the faction's higher-ups. May I ask how it's going? Ren frowned. That's confidential. Did my student tell you? Leaking secrets of the faction was a serious matter, but Yvonne had a special identity. She was unofficially exempt from the rules and regulations. Stephen's mind raced to come up with an excuse. No, I'm on good terms with the celestial beast in the Asura realm. Beasts are everywhere across the 6 realms. I happened to hear about the Asura King in passing. Ren nodded in understanding. I see. I can't tell you too much, but regardless of how the negotiations turn out, the Asura King won't be able to pressure the higher-ups into going along with his demands. The Mystic Covenant has been around for a long time. Our goal is to protect the peace and justice of the 6 realms. The Asura King should be aware that he alone cannot challenge the current order by himself. If he likely wants to allocate a small piece of land in the Asura realm for his people and wait for their species to prosper again. Well, this is only my speculation. As for what happens in the future, we'll just have to see. Thank you for telling me this, Stephen said sincerely. Don't mention it. Take care of yourself. The ancient cultivators you ran into on the mountain are dangerous. They can easily kill people like you who've reached the level of ascension. Stephen listened to his advice and went back to the hotel as fast as he could. It was crowded, but peaceful. Most of the participants stayed in their rooms to cultivate. It had been a long time since Stephen last checked on his internal world. Technology progressed at a rapid rate. The dilapidated towns had been replaced by lively cities. The sound of machinery echoed from the factories on the outskirts. As for the beasts, after a short period of peace, they'd entered an era of slaughter among their species. Generation after generation, the weak were eliminated to preserve the strong. Their current strength was much higher than last time. Stephen knew a war between the humans and the beasts was unavoidable. As the beasts developed battle plans, their intelligence would gradually increase and eventually evolve from ordinary wild beasts to stronger species. Stephen flew above the cities and observed the picturesque land. His gaze shifted to the sky. He'd never explored the expanse of his world before. He flew to a height of 300,000 feet, but the atmosphere was still out of reach. The starry background looked artificial close up. As life continued to develop, the world would eventually become more three-dimensional. In the afternoon, Vivian's father called her to his room. The list of missions from the Mystic Covenant had been updated, and the location of interest were near the mountains where she'd spent the night. Vehicles on the highway had been robbed, and there were no traces of the culprit. Vivian suspected that the ancient cultivators from the ruins were behind the thefts. We should let the other mercenaries handle the missions. Why? This is a chance for us to prove our capabilities to the Mystic Covenant. Lead the mercenaries and complete the missions. It's time for you to start learning how to manage the family business. Don't waste your time doing nothing all day. Vivian didn't think an investigation would lead to any clues, but her father was insistent, so she had no choice but to head out with the mercenaries. When she arrived at the foot of the mountain, she ran into the Sheridan brothers. The culprits had robbed several of their family's trucks, resulting in losses of over 20 million purple gold coins. They'd been searching all afternoon for the culprit, but they couldn't find even a single footprint. Just when they were about to vent their anger, they saw Vivian approaching. They couldn't lose their composure in front of their competitors, so they swallowed their profanity. "Why are you here, Miss Vivian? It's dangerous." "I'm here on a mission with my family's mercenaries, but there's not much evidence to go on." The Sheridan and Belladine families lived in different domains, so they rarely came into contact with each other. The Sheridan brothers' impression of Vivian had gotten worse ever since they witnessed her chatting it up with Mariah. They wouldn't be surprised if she was trying to steal their collaboration. In the middle of their pleasantries, a blade of light crashed into the armored vehicle parked on the side of the road, slicing it in half and leaving a deep crack in the pavement. Vivian's mercenaries surrounded her and ushered her back to the car. They had a duty to protect the family's heir. The Mystic Covenant's mission required them to investigate the situation, not capture the culprit. There were no leads, and it was too dangerous to go further. It wasn't worth the risk. The Sheridan brothers weren't as patient. They unsheathed their swords and rushed up the mountain path. Their bodyguards followed nervously. Based on the attack just now, the culprit was much stronger than them, but the Sheridan brothers wouldn't listen even if they tried to talk them out of it. When the two of them flew into the air to scan the forest, the afterimage of a fist shattered their barrier of inner energy and struck them in the face. Their bodyguards didn't have a chance to protect them as they fell from the sky. Fortunately, although they were bruised, their internal organs and bones were intact. The culprit was hiding in the forest, but none of them could sense their aura. They had no choice but to go back to the city in shame. Vivian had watched the entire scuffle from the roadside. She was glad that her mercenaries weren't as rash as the Sheridan brothers. They could have been killed if they acted recklessly. It was hard to say how long the ancient cultivators would stay on the mountain. Its natural terrain and the mysterious disappearances from centuries ago deterred visitors. It was a suitable place to hide their tracks. Despite the thefts near the mountain, the Haven domain was fairly peaceful. The thefts were small cases that barely attracted any attention. Most people were focused on recruitment. The commercial families who'd suffered losses were the only ones preparing to join forces to find the culprit themselves. The Mystic Covenant was also secretly mobilizing teams, but they weren't planning on sending their people to deal with the issue until the recruitment was over. A week passed in the blink of an eye, and the third round began. The participants once again gathered in the courtyard in front of the Silent Priest Temple. Everyone had recovered to their peak condition, and their auras were surging. No matter where the third round was held, they were determined to eliminate their competitors. The first emissary came forward to announce the third round. "Welcome to the third and final round. All participants will be transported to a crevice between two dimensions. When the remaining number of participants reaches the target, a teleportation array will bring you back. Pay attention to your environment. It's nothing like you've ever seen before. I hope to see you all again." The third round would be held at yet another venue full of dangers. A gravitational force enveloped the participants, and a wave of dizziness washed over them. When they opened their eyes, they found themselves in a dark, desolate city with no one in sight. The moon and stars were covered by a veil of fog. The streets were illuminated by dim lamps at the corner of the streets. Houses lined both sides of the road, and there were incomplete tombstones in the yard. The participants quickly put some distance between each other to avoid being ambushed in the crowd. They split up and carefully searched their surroundings. Stephen summoned the knowledgeable, experienced, and perceptive iridescent dragon. "What is this place? A cemetery? There's tombstones everywhere." "This is Necropolis. It's a city located at the entrance of the Sanctum Realm. After death, the souls of the living beings pass through here to enter the Sanctum Realm. After some time, they're reborn." "Like reincarnation? Where the body dies in one world and their soul is suspended in a temporary space before reincarnating?" "In theory, yes, but not exactly. Most of the souls that pass through the city committed heinous crimes when they were alive. The Sanctum Realm is what you humans call hell. When a regular human dies, their souls are automatically drawn into the Sanctum Realm. But the spiritual energies or powerful cultivators have a firm independent consciousness. Some of them choose to enter the Sanctum Realm, while others stay at the entrance called Necropolis and float around, waiting for a chance to revive." The iridescent dragon's explanation went against what Stephen understood about life and death. "The cycle of life and death is an unshakable rule of the laws of nature. How can it be broken by a powerful cycle of cultivators? Everyone understands the basic principles of life and death, but after they die, their desire to live is magnified. After entering the sanctum realm and reincarnating, their memories and their cultivations will be reset. There will always be people who can't accept this outcome. To the lingering souls in Necropolis, the participants are their chance to revive. They'll stop at nothing to steal their life force. A crowd of souls descended as wisps of smoke. They surrounded the unlucky participants and attached themselves to their bodies. The participants' vitality was drained at a slow speed, but they could feel the strength leaving their limbs. This put them in a vulnerable position. The other participants could attack them at any time. The participants tried to attack the souls with their weapons, but they phased through the wisps of smoke. Their only option was to run and hope the souls targeted someone else. It was a clumsy method, but somewhat effective. The souls drifted slowly, and they faded in and out of existence, making it hard for them to catch up. The crowd ran for their lives. Thorin took advantage of the chaos and slit the throats of the participants nearby. The others cautiously put some distance between them. "Are you crazy? There are thousands of these spirits. We need to work together to deal with them." Thorin flicked his sword, splattering blood on the ground. "You're too naive. Did you forget what the organizers said? The third round will end after the number of participants drops to a certain amount. Fighting the spirits is a waste of time." His words dispersed the panic, and everyone switched gears. Kagan and the Asuras found Stephen in the crowd and rushed over. The other participants engaged in a chaotic fight. The spirits were bothersome, but they weren't a fatal threat. Decreasing the number of participants was the priority. "Where are you going?" Kagan shouted as Stephen and Liam ran in the opposite direction. "Don't you want to settle our grudge?" "Not interested," Stephen called over his shoulder. The iridescent dragon released a stream of pink bubbles, trapping the Asuras who couldn't slow down in time inside. When they attacked the opaque film, the force rebounded back to them. Thorin took a detour and darted in front of Stephen. "You should have stayed in the human realm and enjoyed your wealth and power. Then you could have lived a little longer." "Sounds like you know me pretty well. Why don't you remove your disguise so we're both on the same page?" Thorin didn't see the point in hiding his identity anymore. The participants already knew that Stephen had an imposter. He waved his hand, and his disguise shattered. Stephen could recognize the ambitious and idealistic leader of Tempest Citadel anywhere. Words weren't necessary when two enemies were face to face. Thorin didn't waste a second. He brandished his sword, and screens of purple light surrounded Stephen. At the same time, Stephen condensed the ice dragon's spiritual energy, and shards of ice spread along the ground. The Asuras behind him moved to attack from his blind spot, but the ice shattered, and the fragments embedded in their skin. "You always use the same move," Thorin mocked. "Are you out of ideas?" "I don't see how using any other technique except your light screens," Stephen retorted. The shards of ice adjusted the trajectory of the light from the street lamps and blurred his reflection in the screens. He condensed a clone of himself using the threadworm's iron sand and shattered the light screen. The backlash didn't have much of an effect on the clone. The grains of sand reformed and took shape as soon as it was damaged. Stephen summoned a phantom of the blue whale. It was larger than a mountain. It fell from the sky and swallowed Thorin into its mouth. "You've learned so many annoying tricks from those beasts. Why don't you just stay in the Asura realm and become the celestial beast's servant?" "Is that all you have to say for your last words?" Stephen shot back. The whale secreted a corrosive liquid that pushed Thorin from its mouth into its stomach. His sword did nothing to the whale's phantom body. "Liam, I'm going after him," Stephen said. "Stay here and fend off the Asuras." "You're chasing after him alone. The Asuras are about to break free from the bubbles. They'll start attacking the whale." Liam was well aware that his cultivation, he wouldn't be able to hold off the Asuras, let alone protect Stephen and the whale. "It won't be long. I'll be back soon. Don't do anything risky." Liam had no choice but to acknowledge Stephen's instructions. He condensed his wooden totems. The ground trembled, and a forest of trees extended past the soil, towering over the whale. Kagan popped the bubbles and freed the Asuras. He glared at Stephen's retreating figure. "Where do you think you're going? There's nowhere to run." Liam stepped forward, blocking Stephen from view as he slipped into the whale's mouth. "You'll have to get past me first." The forest was an upgrade from the wooden totems. Every tree in the forest had the ability to transfer damage from Liam. He turned around and dashed into the forest. The trees swayed and covered the path behind him. Stephen caught up to Thorin in a flash and attacked without warning. Their swords clashed, and shockwaves slammed into the ocean of corrosive liquid. Stephen condensed a barrier using the looming waves of liquid and blocked the spatial fluctuations from Thorin's sword. Thorin gritted his teeth and unleashed a cascade of densely woven aura from his sword. It swept towards Stephen like a net. The threadworms appeared beside him and emptied its stomach of metallic powder. They'd ground the abundance of ores and crystals they'd swallowed into a fine powder. When it mixed with the corrosive liquid, its density increased, and it hardened into a material similar to reinforced concrete. Thorin struggled to break free from the metallic substance, but it hardened even faster. While he was preoccupied, the whale flew towards the city gate. A bridge was on the other side, and an elderly woman stood guard at the end. The iridescent dragon spoke in Stephen's mind. That's the Lady of Dreams. Her potion erases the memories of souls before they enter the Sanctum realm. The whale expelled Thorin and Stephen from its stomach when it reached the bridge. Thorin, who was trapped in a thick layer of hardened metallic liquid, landed unceremoniously on the ground. Stephen, on the other hand, landed elegantly in the middle of the bridge. "Excuse me, miss. I need to borrow a small amount of your potion." He grabbed the container and splashed the liquid on Thorin's face. The light in his eyes dimmed, and he stopped struggling. Stephen inserted a needle-like dart with an AI chip into his skull. The Lady of Dreams wasn't pleased. "Who are you? Stealing and wasting my concoction is a sin." The Lady of Dreams' duty was to erase memories. She wasn't that strong, but she did have the ability to summon reinforcements from the Sanctum realm. Stephen wasn't planning on making any new enemies after dealing with Thorin. He straightened his posture and stood respectfully in front of her. "I'm sorry, miss, but I had no choice but to borrow your potion to stop his rampage. I'll do my best to make up for your losses. Give me 50 years of your lifespan as compensation." Stephen waved at Thorin, and he walked over to complete the frightening transaction. The Lady of Dreams wasn't well versed in technology. Stephen and Thorin were clearly enemies, but they were suddenly on good terms. She was confused, but she didn't care about the details. She picked up a spoon from one of her empty containers and knocked 5 times on Thorin's chest, reducing his lifespan by 50 years. His aura fluctuated, like a flame on the verge of being extinguished. It returned to normal a second later. A cultivator's lifespan was long, and this was especially true for ascenders. 50 years was nothing. Stephen wondered what the spoon was made out of. It would be a lethal weapon even in the hands of an ordinary person. The Lady of Dreams caught him staring. "If you're interested, then end your life and become a resident of the Sanctum realm. Who knows, maybe I'll take you in as my student." Stephen hastily stepped back. The people of the Sanctum realm were strange and impossible to communicate with. "If it's fate, we'll meet again. I have to go back to the city and finish what I came to do." Half of the participants had been killed in the city. Those who'd sustained serious injuries couldn't escape the soul's clutches. Their life forces were drained, turning them into lifeless corpses. Liam was hiding in his forest, but things weren't looking too good for him either. There was a limit to how much damage the trees could take. The forest shrank as wooden splinters piled up on the ground. Condensing an entire forest had almost drained all of his inner energy. Considering how the same thing had happened in the second round, Liam had a nagging suspicion that this would become a running trend while he was in the Elysian realm. Ever since the Leviathan unit's leader took him in as a student, he rarely had to go out at all, but during the past week and a half, he'd almost reached his limit multiple times. He was beginning to question his skills. Kagan approached him with the other Asuras. "Why are you alone? Did your friend leave you here to die?" Liam fixed the Asuras with a glare and unsheathed his blade. "You don't know what you're talking about." Before they could fight to the death, a familiar figure dashed in front of Kagan and knocked him back with his sword. Liam and the Asuras were dumbfounded. It was Thorin. "Are you crazy?" Kagan exclaimed. "We should deal with the humans first before settling our grudge." Thorin didn't respond. He exerted more force, and his sword came dangerously close to Kagan's golden horns. Vines extended from the trees and wrapped around the other Asuras. Stephen landed next to Liam and patted his shoulder. "Good work holding them back. With our new powerful ally, we have a 50-50 chance of winning against the Asuras." Liam looked at Thorin and then turned back to Stephen with a bewildered expression. "How did you convince him to join us?" "Technology. I implanted an AI chip in his brain." As the Asuras struggled against the vines, Stephen kicked them in the abdomen, sending them crashing towards the edge of the forest. The souls immediately spotted their next targets. They attached themselves to the Asuras and began to drain their life force. Kagan was furious, but he couldn't bypass Thorin's barrier of spatial fluctuations to save them. Every time he attacked, the ripples deviated from his strikes. Kagan stepped back. It was too late to save his companions. He wouldn't make it in time. This isn't over. We're going to take back the Asura realm. The beasts aren't the true rulers, and they never will be. When I join the expeditionary team, I'll suppress every outsider in our realm. Having said his piece, Kagan ran in the opposite direction to hide until the third round ended. The remaining participants were locked in battle in the distance. Explosions rang out one after another. Bodies littered the ground. The spirits crowded the city like they'd entered a buffet restaurant. The threadworms condensed a layer of iron sand over Stephen, Liam, and Thorin's skin. It helped them camouflage in the dark environment. I wonder how many participants will be selected to join the expeditionary team. There's less than 100 people left. You're going to be selected, Liam said confidently. Stephen gave him a questioning look. Why do you sound so sure? The Mystic Covenant is testing the participants' cultivation, but the final selection isn't based solely on strength. They'll be taking our background into consideration. The expeditionary team carries out missions across the 6 realms. They'll have an easier time if the members are residents from different realms. For example, they're going to choose at least one Asura, because their background will come in handy if the team ever needs to visit the Asura realm. You, me, and Thorin are the only participants from the human realm. If they had to choose, based on your status as the Prophet's student and your cultivation, they'll pick you over me and Thorin. Stephen was impressed with Liam's analysis. He would become a skilled strategist in the future. Spheres of light descended from the sky, signaling the end of the third round. One by one, the participants who were selected to join the expeditionary team were transported back to the courtyard. Stephen met Liam's gaze and knew he'd realize the same thing from the flicker of fear in his eyes. Those who weren't selected would be left to die in Necropolis. It's okay. You're coming back with me, whether you're chosen or not. Stephen wasn't about to leave Liam behind. He didn't know if the Bone Blade could open spatial rifts here, but if all else failed, he would hide Liam in the Ice Dragon's stomach and bring him back to the spiritual world. Fortunately, Stephen didn't need to resort to countermeasures. 2 spheres of light drifted from the sky and enveloped them both. They disappeared from Necropolis together. The participants brightened upon returning to the sunny Haven domain, but there were some who weren't thrilled by the results. The Sheridan brothers sat in the shade, grumbling to each other in a low voice. How is Stephen still alive? He has so many enemies. The Asuras are useless. They're strong, but they lack intelligence. That's why they were kicked out of their own realm by the beasts. Now that Stephen's been selected, it'll be even harder to get rid of him. It's not worth provoking the Mystic Covenant. You know how strict their rules are. Let's just visit Mariah and give him a gift to get on his good side for now. Shadow was disgusted when he saw Stephen alive and kicking. He scowled at his bodyguards. Do you know how hard it was to get those invitations? They were wasted on you. I should have teamed up with the Asuras. The bodyguards felt wronged, but they said nothing. Their mission was to protect Shadow. They didn't have time to worry about other participants. The emissaries waited a full hour. No other participants were transported back to the courtyard. The participants who weren't chosen would be fated to an internal slumber in the necropolis. Congratulations on passing the final round. We'll be handing out tokens shortly. Our faction's rules and regulations are outlined inside. Read them carefully. If you accidentally break a rule, there will be consequences. You'll be reporting for duty in 2 weeks. It doesn't matter which faction you belong to or what cultivation techniques you've been practicing. Everyone will have to start from scratch. During these 2 weeks, the 30 participants would have an opportunity to break and recover from their injuries. Even if they didn't sustain a physical injury, they'd been surrounded by the aura of death and necropolis for an extended period of time. Most of them had internal injuries in their organs and meridians. As the participants began to leave after receiving their tokens, Vivian went up to Stephen and Liam to congratulate them. I really didn't think you two would make it, especially you, Liam. You're not even at the level of ascension. Aren't you worried about getting killed during missions? Liam felt ashamed. He would have been chosen if it wasn't for Stephen. I think I should find a quiet place to cultivate for the next 2 weeks and avoid embarrassing myself on the first day. Don't feel pressured, Stephen said. Strength isn't everything. We're all beginners in the faction. There's nothing to worry about. We'll learn together. He turned to Vivian. I'm guessing your family's reputation is saved? I don't know why your father recommended me to the city lord in the first place. Vivian shrugged. Beats me. All's well that ends well, right? It had been a while since Stephen saw his family and friends. He was ready to go home and visit them. He and Liam carpooled with Vivian back to the Sky Domain and got off before they reached Minori City. Stephen opened a spatial rift with the bone blade. Through the crack between dimensions, he could vaguely see the familiar scenery of the human realm. You're an Ascender now. Will you be able to go back to the human realm? Liam asked. I don't know. There might be a backlash, but I can't just abandon my family and friends. Stephen went into the rift without hesitation. Liam followed him. Annapolis was as peaceful as they remembered. The last time Stephen was here, he'd survived his heavenly trial at the training ground. It was an earth-shattering process, and it couldn't be hidden from the intelligence systems in other countries. Whether they knew what happened or not, the lightning from the heavens was a show of strength. The other countries wouldn't be bothering the U.S. for quite some time. At the Military Administration Building, Stephen found Kim working in his office. The Leviathan unit had agreed when she asked if she could work here. They were in charge of protecting Stephen's family, and having his wife in the building made things more convenient. Stephen swept Kim into his arms the moment he entered the office. Welcome back! How was the recruitment? Were you chosen? Of course, Stephen said proudly. One of the elders even asked me to be a student. Doesn't that mean you have a backer in the Elysian realm now? Kind of, but I can't rely on him for everything. I need to develop my business to establish my position there. The Elysian realm isn't that different from our world. In the middle of their conversation, Stephen had to sit down to catch his breath. His inner energy was draining out of him like he was undergoing continuous high-intensity training. Kim sat next to him. Concern shone in her eyes. What's wrong? Were you hurt during the recruitment? No, it's just that after ascending, the original world will start rejecting you. I only have a few days at most, but it's not a big deal. I can keep coming back to see you. With Stephen's energy reserves, he could stay for a few days. If he really couldn't handle the rejection, he could use the Berserker's blessing to provide extra energy.